Sarah Montgomery was treated like trash, a mistake her in-laws intended to erase. During their prestigious masquerade charity gala, the family chose to strip their daughter-in-law of her dignity in front of 500 live cameras. They wanted to break her spirit, but they made one fatal error, ignoring the guest list. Watching from the shadows was no stranger, but the deadliest billionaire in Europe, her father. This is the story of how the Montgomery empire crumbled in 45 minutes, proving that when you strip a woman of her dress, you might just reveal the bulletproof armor of a Volkov. New York City, November. The air inside the penthouse at 432 Park Avenue smelled of expensive lilies and silent judgment. Sarah Montgomery, formerly Sarah Bennett, adjusted the collar of her worn cardigan, trying to shrink into the beige walls. She had been married to Richard Montgomery for 3 years, and for 3 years she had felt less like a wife and more like a smudge on a pristine window. "Sarah, move out of the way. You're blocking the light." The voice belonged to Beatrice Montgomery, her mother-in-law. Beatrice was 60, looked 40, and had a heart made of cold-pressed steel. She was currently directing a team of florists for the upcoming Montgomery Foundation Gala, an event that was the crown jewel of the Manhattan social season. "Sorry, Beatrice," Sarah murmured, stepping aside. "It's Mrs. Montgomery to you while we have company," Beatrice snapped, not looking up from her clipboard. "Honestly, look at you, wearing that rag while the caterers are here. You look like the help." "Actually, the help dresses better." Richard was sitting on the velvet sofa, scrolling through his phone. He didn't look up. He never looked up anymore. When they met at a coffee shop in Brooklyn 4 years ago, Richard had been charming, rebellious, different from his stifling family. But the moment they married, and he needed his trust fund unlocked, the rebellion evaporated. Now he was just another Montgomery. Cruel about it, Sarah. I don't have a what about it, Sarah. I don't have a dress. Beatrice said I wasn't allowed to buy anything new until I earned my keep, but the gala is black tie. Beatrice laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "Oh, honey, you aren't sitting at the main table. We put you at table 42. It's near the kitchen entrance. No one will see you. Wear that black thing you wore to the funeral last year. It suits your personality." Dead. Sarah felt the familiar burn of tears, but swallowed them down. She had learned early on that tears only fed them. They thrived on her pain. They hated her because she was a nobody, an orphan who grew up in the foster system in Ohio, a waitress with no pedigree, no money, and no connections. They believed Richard had married beneath him, staining the bloodline. What they didn't know, what Sarah didn't even know until 3 days ago, was the truth about her biological parents. She touched the pocket of her jeans where a crumpled letter lay hidden. It was from a private investigator she had hired with the secret cash she made freelance copy editing online. The letter claimed her biological father wasn't a deadbeat from Ohio. It claimed he was alive. It claimed he was looking for her, but she couldn't focus on that now. She had to survive tonight. "Beatrice," Sarah said, her voice trembling but louder this time. "I am Richard's wife. I deserve to sit with the family." The room went silent. The florists stopped arranging hydrangeas. Beatrice slowly turned, her face twisting into a mask of pure venom. "You deserve," Beatrice hissed, walking over to poke a manicured finger into Sarah's chest, "what we give you. You are a leech, Sarah. A gold digger who trapped my son. Tonight, the vice president is attending. The CEO of J.P. Morgan is attending. Do you think I want them to see you? You're lucky we don't lock you in the coat check." "Richard?" Sarah looked at her husband. Are you going to let her speak to me like that? Richard stood up, adjusting his bespoke suit jacket. He looked at his mother, then at Sarah. Mum's right, Sarah. You're embarrassing. Just stay out of the way tonight. And for God's sake, try to look like you belong in this zip code for once. He walked out. The door clicked shut, sealing Sarah's fate. The Pierre Hotel. 7 p.m. The ballroom was a sea of diamonds, velvet, and fake smiles. The Montgomery Foundation Gala was in full swing. Sarah sat at table 42, exactly where Beatrice had said she would be. It was drafty, right next to the swinging doors where waiters rushed in with trays of filet mignon. She wore the old black dress. She had tried to accessorize it with a simple pearl necklace, the only gift Richard had ever given her, back when he pretended to love her. "Excuse me, miss, you're in the way," a waiter grumbled, bumping her chair. "Sorry," she whispered. From her vantage point, she could see the head table. It was bathed in golden light. Beatrice was holding court in a shimmering silver gown, laughing with a senator. Richard was next to her, his arm draped around a woman Sarah recognized, Carolyn Vanderbilt, a debutante, the woman Beatrice had always wanted Richard to marry. They weren't even hiding it anymore. Suddenly, the music stopped. The chatter died down. Beatrice stood up at the microphone on the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," Beatrice announced, her voice booming through the speakers, "thank you for coming. Tonight is about purity. It is about legacy. It is about excellence. But before we begin the auction, we have a bit of housekeeping to do." Beatrice's eyes scanned the room, locking on to table 42. Sarah felt a cold dread settle in her stomach. "We have an impostor among us," Beatrice said, her smile turning predatory. "Someone who thinks that marrying a Montgomery makes them a Montgomery. Someone who has leeched off my family's generosity for 3 years." Spotlights swiveled. 2 massive beams of light cut through the room and landed squarely on Sarah. She froze, blinded. The room gasped. "Sarah Bennett," Beatrice sneered into the mic. "Or should I say the waitress from Ohio? You see, everyone, we recently discovered that Sarah has been stealing from us. Petty theft, silverware, cash from wallets. Disgusting, really." "That's a lie," Sarah screamed, standing up, but her voice was lost in the cavernous room. "Security," Beatrice commanded. "Please escort the thief out. But wait, we can't let her leave with stolen goods, can we?" 2 burly security guards grabbed Sarah by the arms. She struggled, panic rising in her throat. "Get off me! Richard! Richard! Tell them to stop!" She looked toward the head table. Richard was sipping his champagne, deliberately looking away. Caroline Vanderbilt was giggling. "Search her," Beatrice commanded. "Right there. Let everyone see what a common criminal looks like." "No," Sarah cried, as one of the guards roughly grabbed her purse and dumped it on the floor. Her phone, lipstick, and tampons scattered on the carpet. The crowd laughed. "Not just the purse," Beatrice said, her voice dropping to a cruel whisper that echoed through the speakers. "She might be hiding jewelry under that dress. Check her." The room went deadly silent. This was too far, even for the Montgomerys. But no one moved. No one spoke. The Montgomerys were too powerful. To cross Beatrice was social suicide. The guard hesitated. "Mrs. Montgomery, surely—" "I said check her!" Beatrice shrieked. "Strip her if you have to. I want those diamond earrings back." The guard reached for the strap of Sarah's dress. "Don't touch me," Sarah sobbed, slapping his hand away. The strap tore. The fabric slid down her shoulder, exposing her bra strap and the pale skin of her chest. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Flashes went off. People were taking photos. This was the end. She was being stripped, humiliated, destroyed in front of the entire city. She closed her eyes, wishing the floor would open up and swallow her whole. "That's enough." The voice didn't come from the stage. It didn't come from the guards. It came from the back of the room. It was deep, accented, and carried a weight that made the air in the ballroom instantly heavier. The double doors at the main entrance blasted open. A man walked in. He was tall, silver-haired, wearing a tuxedo that cost more than the average American home. He walked with a cane, not out of frailty, but like a weapon. Flanking him were 6 men who looked less like security and more like special forces operatives. The man walked straight toward the spotlight, his eyes locked on the guards holding Sarah. "Unhand her," the man said calmly, "or you will lose the hands." Beatrice squinted against the lights. "Who do you think you are? This is a private event. Security, get him out." The man ignored her. He reached table 42. The guards, sensing a predator far more dangerous than Beatrice, immediately let go of Sarah. She slumped, clutching her torn dress, shaking violently. The stranger took off his tuxedo jacket. With gentle, almost reverent hands, he wrapped it around Sarah's trembling shoulders. It smelled of cedar and rain. He looked down at her, his steel-grey eyes softening with an emotion that looked painfully like regret. "I'm sorry I am late, ma petite," he whispered. He turned to face the stage. He looked at Beatrice, then at Richard. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "You asked who I am," the man said, his voice projecting without a microphone, filling every corner of the Pierre. "My name is Julian Thorne, is not who I am. My name is Stefan Volkov." A murmur of terror went through the room. Stefan Volkov, the Wolf of Zurich, the billionaire industrialist who owned half the shipping lines in the world, a man who toppled governments for sport. "And you," Stefan pointed a gloved finger at Beatrice, "have just made a very grave mistake. You have not just humiliated a nobody. You have stripped the daughter of Stefan Volkov." Sarah looked up, her vision blurry with tears, the letter in her pocket, the investigation. "Papa," she whispered. Stefan looked down, a single tear escaping his eye. "Yes, Sarah, I am here, and I am going to burn their world down." The silence in the Pierre Hotel ballroom was absolute. 500 of New York's elite, senators, oil tycoons, tech moguls, held their breath. The air crackled with a tension so thick it felt like the crystal chandeliers might shatter. Beatrice Montgomery stood frozen on stage, her hand gripping the microphone stand until her knuckles turned white. Her face, usually a mask of heavy foundation and arrogance, was cracking. She knew the name, Stefan Volkov. Everyone did. He was the Wolf of Zurich. He didn't just buy companies, he devoured them. He was rumored to have caused the collapse of the Argentine currency in the 90s just to win a bet. And she had just ordered his daughter to be stripped naked. "You're lying," Beatrice finally choked out, though her voice lacked its usual venom. It sounded tinny and small. Sarah is a nobody, an orphan from Ohio. Her mother was a drug addict who died in a trailer park. Stefan Volkov didn't shout. He didn't rage. He simply adjusted the tuxedo jacket around Sarah's shoulders, buttoning it with the care of a father dressing a child for school. He turned his head slowly toward the stage. "Her mother," Stefan said, his voice low but carrying to the back of the room, "was Maria Conti, the love of my life. She was kidnapped 26 years ago by my enemies. I was told she and the baby died. I spent 2 decades mourning a ghost." He stepped closer to the stage, his cane clicking rhythmically on the marble floor. Click, click, click. It sounded like a countdown. "I found the truth 3 days ago. I flew here immediately. And what do I find?" Stefan gestured to Sarah, who was wiping mascara from her cheeks, standing tall despite the trembling. "I find my daughter married to a coward and enslaved by a harpy." "Now, wait just a minute." Richard Montgomery suddenly found his voice. He scrambled up from the head table, realizing the optics of the situation. If Sarah was a Volkov, she was worth billions. The Montgomery Foundation was currently 3 months behind on its loan payments. He needed to pivot. Fast. Richard ran down the steps of the stage, pushing past a waiter. He approached Sarah with a wide, desperate smile, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Sarah, baby," Richard said, sweating. "Look, this is all a misunderstanding. Mum was just stressed. We were doing a bit for the charity. A skit, right? It was a joke." He reached out to touch Sarah's arm. "Come on, honey. Let's go home. We can talk about this." Before his fingers could graze the fabric of Stefan's jacket, Stefan's cane moved. It was a blur of motion. The heavy silver handle of the cane cracked against Richard's wrist. Crack. "Ah!" Richard screamed, clutching his hand, dropping to his knees. "He broke my wrist! Security! Arrest him!" "Touch her again," Stefan said, looking down at his son-in-law with the cold indifference of a man watching an insect. "And I will break the other one." The security guards, who had previously been manhandling Sarah, stepped back, hands raised. They weren't paid enough to fight a billionaire's private army. Stefan's 6 guards had already silently secured the perimeter of the room, their hands hovering near their jackets. Beatrice shrieked from the stage. "Call the police! This is assault! That man is a maniac!" "Please do call the police," Stefan said calmly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek black phone. "In fact, I already have. But they aren't coming for me, Mrs. Montgomery." Sirens began to wail outside, growing louder every second. Blue and red lights flashed against the ballroom windows. "You accused my daughter of theft," Stefan said. "Public defamation. Then you ordered your employees to sexually assault her by forcibly removing her clothing in a public space. There are 500 witnesses. There are cameras." He pointed to a cameraman from a local news station who had been hired to cover the gala. The cameraman was still rolling, zooming in on Beatrice's terrified face. "We will press charges," Stefan continued, "for assault, battery, emotional distress, and defamation. But that is the boring part. That is for the lawyers." Stefan walked over to Sarah, offering her his arm. "Come, ma petite. The air in here is toxic." Sarah looked at Richard, who was whimpering on the floor, cradling his broken wrist. She looked at Caroline Vanderbilt, who had quietly slipped away from the table to distance herself from the scandal. She looked at Beatrice, who was trembling with rage and fear on the stage. For the first time in 3 years, Sarah didn't feel small. She felt the heavy warmth of the tuxedo jacket. She felt the solid presence of the father she had dreamed of since she was a little girl in the foster home. "Richard," Sarah said softly. Richard looked up, hope in his eyes. "Sarah, tell him. Tell him we're married. Tell him you love me." Sarah looked at him for a long moment. Then she slowly slid the wedding ring off her finger. It was a modest ring. Beatrice had chosen it, saying a large diamond would look gaudy on Sarah's hand. She dropped the ring. It bounced on the carpet and rolled to a stop next to Richard's knee. "I want a divorce," she said. Her voice was clear. "And I want my last name back." Stefan smiled, a terrifying, wolfish smile. "Excellent choice." He turned to the crowd, raising his voice one last time. "Enjoy your dinner, everyone. I suggest you eat quickly, because by tomorrow morning, anyone associated with the Montgomery Foundation will find it very difficult to do business in this city. I advise you to check your alliances." With that, Stefan Volkov swept his daughter out of the ballroom. The double doors swung shut behind them, leaving the Montgomery dynasty in ruins amidst the smell of filet mignon and fear. The limousine was longer than the apartment Sarah had shared with Richard. It glided through the streets of Manhattan like a black shark. Inside it was quiet, save for the soft hum of the engine and the clink of crystal. Sarah sat on the plush leather seat, shivering. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion. She clutched the lapels of Stefan's jacket tight against her chest. Stefan sat across from her. He hadn't taken his eyes off her since they left the hotel. He poured a glass of amber liquid from a decanter and held it out to her. "Brandy," he said gently. "It will stop the shaking. Drink." Sarah took the glass with trembling hands. She took a sip. The liquid burned pleasantly, grounding her. "Is it true?" she whispered, her voice cracking. "Are you really?" "I am," Stefan said. He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a worn, creased photograph. He handed it to her. It was a Polaroid from the late 90s. In it, a younger Stefan stood on a balcony overlooking Lake Como, his arms wrapped around a laughing woman with dark, curly hair and bright green eyes. Sarah gasped. The woman had her nose, her chin, her eyes. "Maria," Stefan said softly. "She was an artist. We met in Florence. My family, the Volkovs. We have enemies. Dangerous business rivals. I tried to keep her secret, but they found her. When she disappeared, they sent me proof of her death. A forged death certificate. Fake police reports. I fell apart. I didn't know she was pregnant." He leaned forward, his face etched with pain. "She escaped them, Sarah, but she was afraid to contact me. She thought I had abandoned her. She fled to America, changed her name, and hid in Ohio. She died in childbirth. The state took you. I only found out because your private investigator's query triggered a keyword search in my security system." Sarah ran her thumb over the face of the woman in the photo. All those years wishing for a family, thinking she was unwanted trash, and all along she was the lost daughter of a king. "Why were they so cruel?" Sarah asked, tears spilling over again. "Beatrice, Richard, I tried so hard to be good. I cooked, I cleaned, I stayed quiet. Why did they hate me so much?" Stefan's expression hardened. The sadness vanished, replaced by the steel that made him the most feared businessman in Europe. "Because, my child, they are weak. Weak people need to crush others to feel tall. They saw your kindness and mistook it for lack of spine. They saw your poverty and mistook it for lack of worth." He tapped his cane on the floor of the limo. "But you are a Volkov. We do not cry over the opinions of sheep. We share them." The limo pulled up to a private entrance at the Plaza Hotel. Stefan escorted her into a private elevator that opened directly into the royal penthouse. It was a palace in the sky, gold leaf, velvet, and a view of Central Park that cost $50,000 a night. A team of people was waiting, a doctor, a stylist, and a man in a sharp grey suit holding a briefcase. "Check her for injuries," Stefan ordered the doctor. "Document everything, every bruise, every scratch. We will need it for the file." While the doctor examined Sarah's arm where the guard had grabbed her, Stefan poured himself a drink and motioned to the man in the grey suit. "Sarah, this is Arthur Sterling," Stefan said. "He is my personal counsel. He is the best lawyer in New York, mostly because he has no soul." Arthur smiled thinly. "A pleasure, Ms. Volkov. Or should I say, Ms. Bennett, for now." "Volkov," Sarah said, surprised by the strength in her own voice. The doctor finished bandaging a small cut on her shoulder. She stood up, walking to the floor-to-ceiling mirror. She looked at herself. The torn black dress hung off her like a rag. Her hair was messy. Her makeup was smeared. But behind the mess, she saw something new. She saw Maria's fire. She saw Stefan's steel. She turned to Arthur. "How fast can we destroy them?" Arthur raised an eyebrow, looking at Stefan. Stefan nodded, pride beaming in his eyes. "Financially?" Arthur asked, opening his briefcase. "Richard Montgomery has a trust fund that pays out monthly, but he has leveraged it heavily to pay for gambling debts and his mistress's apartment in Soho. Beatrice Montgomery runs the foundation, but the foundation is essentially a shell company used for tax evasion. They are cash poor and asset rich." "Not for long," Stefan interrupted. "Arthur, tell her about the bank." Arthur smirked. 3 hours ago, while you were getting dressed for the gala, Mr. Volkov purchased a controlling interest in First City Heritage Bank." Sarah frowned. That's the bank the Montgomerys use." "Correct," Arthur said. "They have a $40 million line of credit with that bank. It's what funds their lifestyle, their galas, their Hamptons house. Usually the bank rolls the loan over every year without question." Arthur pulled a document from his folder. "There is a clause in their loan agreement. Section 4, paragraph B, the moral turpitude clause. It states that if the borrowers engage in public behavior that damages the bank's reputation, the bank has the right to call in the full loan immediately." Sarah's eyes widened. "The gala." "Exactly," Stefan said, walking over to stand beside her. "Stripping a woman on a live stream? That is very bad for business. Arthur is going to call the loan at 9 a.m. tomorrow." "They don't have $40 million in cash," Sarah said. "They spent it all on appearances." "Then we foreclose," Stefan said simply. "We take the townhouse. We take the Hamptons estate. We take the cars. We take the jewelry Beatrice was wearing tonight." Sarah felt a rush of cold satisfaction. It wasn't just revenge. It was justice. "But that is just the beginning," Stefan said. "I don't just want them poor, Sarah. I want them to feel what you felt. I want them isolated. I want them to be the ones no one wants to sit with." He turned to Sarah. "Tomorrow you are going to go shopping. You will buy a new wardrobe. You will get your hair done. You will look like the heiress you are. And then we are going to pay a visit to Richard's office." "Why?" Sarah asked. "Because," Stefan grinned, "I also bought the building his company rents, and I think the rent is about to go up." Sarah looked back in the mirror. She wiped the last tear from her cheek. The timid girl from Ohio was gone. In her place stood Sarah Volkov, and she was ready for war. "Let's do it," she said. "But I want one thing." "Anything," Stefan said. "Beatrice loves her social standing more than her life," Sarah said, her voice dropping. "The gala was supposed to be her triumph. I want to host my own party in 1 week, and I want to invite everyone who was there tonight. I want to see if they choose her, or the daughter of Stefan Volkov." Stefan laughed, a deep, booming sound. "Oh, you are definitely my daughter. Consider it done." Upper East Side, the Montgomery townhouse. 8 a.m. Beatrice Montgomery woke up to a sound she had never heard in her life. The silence of a phone not ringing. Usually, the morning after the gala, her phone would be blowing up with congratulations, society columnists begging for quotes, and friends gossiping about who wore what. Today, there was nothing. She sat up, her head pounding from the bottle of wine she had downed after escaping the Pierre. She grabbed her iPad. She navigated to the New York Post. Her heart stopped. The headline wasn't about the charity. It wasn't about the vice president. "Money, malice, and the mafia. The Montgomery family strips billionaire heiress." The photo was high definition. It showed the exact moment the strap of Sarah's dress tore, with Beatrice's face in the background twisted in a snarl that looked demonic under the stage lights. Next to it was a side-by-side photo of Stefan Volkov, looking like a vengeful god. "No," Beatrice whispered. "This can't be happening." She heard a crash downstairs. She threw on her silk robe and ran down the spiral staircase. Richard was in the foyer, pacing. The front door was open. 2 men in blue windbreakers were carrying out the antique grandfather clock that had been in the family for 4 generations. "What are you doing?" Beatrice screamed. "Put that down! Richard, stop them!" Richard looked at his mother with wild, bloodshot eyes. He looked like he hadn't slept. "I can't, Mum. It's the bank." "The bank?" Beatrice marched up to the movers. "Get out of my house! Do you know who I am?" A man in a sharp suit stepped in from the porch. It was Arthur Sterling, Stefan's lawyer. He held a clipboard. "Good morning, Mrs. Montgomery," Arthur said cheerfully. "We know exactly who you are. You are the debtor who defaulted on the moral turpitude clause of your loan agreement at 9:01 a.m. this morning." "Defaulted?" Beatrice spat. "We have 30 days to cure a default." "Not for a behavior breach," Arthur corrected, tapping the paper. "Immediate acceleration of debt. You owe First City Heritage Bank $42 million. Since you don't have the cash, we are exercising our right to seize collateral. The clock goes, the art goes, and—" Arthur looked around the foyer. "We'll be taking the Bentley in the driveway, too." "Richard!" Beatrice shrieked. "Do something!" "I tried," Richard yelled back, his voice cracking. "I called the bank manager. He wouldn't take my call. He said the new owner of the bank gave specific instructions." "New owner?" Beatrice went pale. "Stefan Volkov," Arthur said, checking his watch. "He bought the bank yesterday. He also bought your debt. Effectively, you are living in Mr. Volkov's house. He's allowing you to stay here for, let's see, 3 more days. Just enough time to pack." Richard's phone buzzed. He looked at it, and his face went grey. "It's the firm," Richard whispered. "The partners. They're holding an emergency meeting." "Go!" Beatrice pushed him. "Go and fix this. If you lose your job, we have no income stream." Midtown Manhattan. Sterling and Company. Hedge fund. 10 a.m. Richard stormed into the glass-walled office of the senior partner, barely acknowledging the secretary who tried to stop him. He was wearing the same suit from last night, rumpled and smelling of stale champagne. "Bill, we need to talk," Richard said, barging in. "The press is blowing this out of proportion. Sarah is... she's unstable. I can spin this." Bill, a heavy-set man who had been Richard's mentor, didn't look up from his desk. He was packing photos into a cardboard box. "There's nothing to spin, Richard," Bill said quietly. "What do you mean? It's a domestic dispute. It has nothing to do with the fund." Bill pointed to the TV mounted on the wall. It was tuned to CNBC. The ticker at the bottom read, "Volkov Industries pulls $500 million asset management contract from Sterling and CO." Richard felt the blood drain from his legs. "He pulled his money?" "He called at 6 a.m., Bill said, finally looking at Richard with disgust. "He said he refuses to do business with a firm that employs a man who beats women. He gave us an ultimatum. Fire Richard Montgomery, or Volkov Industries destroys us." Bill slammed the box shut. "You're done, Richard. Security is waiting to escort you out. Your keycard has been deactivated." "You can't do this!" Richard shouted. "I brought in the Vanderbilt account." "Caroline Vanderbilt called 10 minutes ago," Bill added. "She moved her portfolio to J.P. Morgan. She said she doesn't want to be associated with trash. Get out." Richard stumbled out of the office. The entire trading floor went silent as he walked by. People who had grabbed drinks with him last week turned their backs. He was radioactive. He reached the elevator, pressing the button frantically. When the doors opened, he froze. Standing inside the elevator were Stefan Volkov and Sarah. Sarah looked breathtaking. She was wearing a cream-colored power suit that fit her perfectly, her hair blown out in soft waves. She looked nothing like the mouse he had ignored for 3 years. She looked expensive. She looked dangerous. "Going down?" Stefan asked, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. Richard stepped back, but the door stayed open. "Sarah," he croaked. "Sarah, please, you have to stop this. They fired me. They took the house." "We have nothing." Sarah stepped out of the elevator, forcing Richard to retreat into the hallway. She stood toe-to-toe with him. She was wearing heels, making her almost eye-level with him. "You had everything, Richard," Sarah said, her voice steady. "You had a wife who adored you. You had a home, but you traded it for your mother's approval and a debutante who just dumped you. I can change," Richard pleaded, reaching for her hand. "I still love you. We can fix this. I'll stand up to my mother, I promise." Sarah looked at his hand, the hand that had failed to protect her. "You aren't losing your job because of your mother, Richard," Sarah said coldly. "You're losing it because you're a bad investment, and I'm done throwing good money after bad." Stefan stepped forward, handing Richard a single envelope. "What is this?" Richard asked, his hands shaking. "Divorce papers," Stefan said. "And an eviction notice for your apartment in Soho, the one you keep for your extracurricular activities. I bought that building this morning, too." Sarah pressed the elevator button. As the doors closed, she saw Richard slide down the wall, burying his face in his hands. She waited for the guilt to hit her. It didn't. All she felt was lighter. 2 days later. The downfall of the Montgomerys was the fastest collapse in New York history, was currently staying in a suite at a hotel in the Hamptons, was currently staying in a suite at a mid-range hotel near the airport, the only place that would take her credit card before it was inevitably declined. She sat on the stiff bed, surrounded by Louis Vuitton luggage that she would soon have to sell on eBay. She picked up her phone. She had one card left to play, the social circle, the Dames of New York. She had been the president of the committee for 10 years. Surely her friends would stand by her. They knew how important she was. She dialed Margaret Kensington, her oldest friend. "Hello?" Margaret answered, her voice guarded. "Margaret, darling, it's Beatrice. Listen, this whole thing is a dreadful misunderstanding. That Russian mobster has brainwashed everyone. I'm organizing a brunch at Le Coucou tomorrow to explain everything and organize a counter-statement. I need you to co-host." There was a long, awkward silence. "Beatrice," Margaret said slowly, "I can't." "What do you mean you can't? You're my vice president." "I'm the president now, actually," Margaret said. "The board voted this morning. We removed you, Beatrice. Unanimously." You backstabbing witch," Beatrice gasped. "We have a reputation to uphold," Margaret snapped. "And honestly, Beatrice, we never really liked you. You were always so desperate. And now that you're poor, you're just tedious. Don't call this number again." The line went dead. Beatrice threw the phone across the room. It cracked against the wall. 5th Avenue, Bergdorf Goodman. While Beatrice was screaming in a hotel room, Sarah was in the private shopping suite of Bergdorf Goodman. Stefan sat in a velvet armchair, sipping espresso, watching his daughter transform. Sarah stepped out of the dressing room, wearing a gown of midnight blue silk. It was structured, elegant, and regal. It was a dress meant for a queen, not a victim. "It's beautiful," Sarah whispered, looking in the mirror. "But it costs $12,000. Dad, I can't. This is too much." Stefan stood up and walked over to her. "Sarah, money is a tool. For the Montgomerys, it was a shield to hide their ugliness. For us, it is a sword. You need to look the part. Tonight we make your debut." "Tonight?" Sarah asked. "The Volkov Welcome Ball," Stefan announced. "We rented the Metropolitan Museum of Art." Sarah's jaw dropped. "The Met? That takes months to book." "Not when you donate a new wing to the museum," Stefan winked. "The invitations went out this morning. They are made of solid 24-carat gold leaf. Everyone who is anyone in New York received one." Did they receive one?" Sarah asked. "Not yet," Stefan said darkly. "I have a special delivery planned for them." The street. Richard was walking down Fifth Avenue. He had sold his Rolex to pay for a lawyer, but the lawyer had laughed him out of the office once he saw the evidence Stefan had compiled. Richard saw a familiar face coming out of a salon. It was Caroline Vanderbilt. She looked pristine, holding a shopping bag. "Caroline!" Richard jogged over to her. "Caroline, wait." Caroline stopped. She looked him up and down, her nose wrinkling as if she smelled something rotten. "Richard," she said flatly, "you look terrible." "I need help, Caroline. I need a place to stay. Just for a few days until the liquidations go through. You know I'm good for it." Caroline laughed. "Good for it? Richard, you're toxic. My father said if I'm seen with you, he'll cut me off. You're a pariah." She pulled an envelope out of her purse. It was shimmering gold. "Look at this," she taunted, waving the invitation. "Sarah's party. At the Met. Everyone is going. The rumor is that Bruno Mars is performing privately. And guess who isn't invited?" She tapped the envelope against Richard's chest. "Go home to your mother, Richard. That's the only woman who will have you now." Caroline hailed a cab and sped off, leaving Richard standing alone on the sidewalk. Passers-by were staring. Someone took a photo of him. He realized with horror that he was becoming a meme. The airport hotel. 6 p.m. The room was dark. Beatrice and Richard sat in silence. They had ordered room service, but their card had been declined, so they were eating vending machine crackers. "We have to leave the city," Richard said, his head in his hands. "Move to the Midwest. Change our names. It's over, Mom." "I will not live in Ohio," Beatrice hissed. "I am a Montgomery. We founded this city." "We owe this city $40 million, Richard shouted back. "It's over." A knock on the door interrupted them. Both of them jumped. "Room service?" Beatrice asked, hopefully. Richard opened the door. There was no one there, just a small, elegant black box sitting on the hallway carpet. Richard picked it up and brought it inside. Beatrice snatched it from him. "It's from Van Cleef & Arpels," she whispered, recognizing the brand of the box. Her eyes lit up. Maybe it's a settlement offer? Maybe they want to buy our silence?" She tore the box open. Inside there was no jewelry. There was a folded piece of heavy cardstock and a USB drive. Beatrice unfolded the card. "To the Montgomerys, you are cordially invited to the Metropolitan Museum of Art tonight at 8 p.m. We have a final business matter to discuss. If you attend, we will consider forgiving the debt. If you do not, I will release the contents of this drive to the FBI. S. Volkov." "The debt," Richard breathed. "He'll forgive the debt. That's $40 million. We'd be free." "What's on the drive?" Beatrice asked, her hands shaking. "Does it matter?" Richard said. "If we go, we get a clean slate. We can start over." Beatrice looked at the invitation. Her vanity began to creep back in. "He wants to settle. He realized he went too far. He's afraid of a lawsuit. That's it. He wants to pay us off publicly to save face." She stood up, smoothing her wrinkled dress. "We have to go. But we can't look like this. Mum, we have no clothes. The movers took everything." Beatrice ran to the closet. "I hid one garment bag in the false bottom of the trunk. They missed it." She pulled out a dress. It wasn't her usual silver or gold. It was a loud, garish red gown she had bought years ago and never worn because it was too much. Now it was all she had. "Put on your tuxedo, Richard," she commanded. "The one you're wearing. Steam it in the shower. We are going to the Met." "Mum, this feels like a trap," Richard said, hesitating. "It's not a trap, you idiot," Beatrice snapped. "It's a negotiation, and I never lose a negotiation." The Metropolitan Museum of Art. 7:45 p.m. The red carpet was draped over the iconic steps of the Met. Paparazzi lined the barricades, 5 deep. The flashing lights were blinding. Limousines arrived one by one. The mayor stepped out. The governor, Hollywood stars, tech billionaires. They all walked up the steps, holding their gold invitations. Inside, the great hall had been transformed into a winter garden. White roses, thousands of them, hung from the ceiling. A string orchestra played softly. Stefan and Sarah stood at the top of the grand staircase, greeting guests. Sarah wore the midnight blue gown. She wore a necklace of sapphires and diamonds that Stefan had bought from the Russian crown jewels collection. She looked untouchable. "Are you ready?" Stefan asked quietly, leaning in. "Yes," Sarah said. Her heart was pounding, but not with fear, with anticipation. "They just arrived," Arthur Sterling whispered, appearing beside them. "They are at the bottom of the steps. The press is eating them alive." Outside the Met, Beatrice and Richard stepped out of their Uber, an Uber X, which was humiliating enough. As soon as they hit the red carpet, the mood changed. The paparazzi didn't shout, "Beatrice, over here," like they used to. They shouted questions. "Beatrice, is it true you're bankrupt? Richard, did you really hit her? Mrs. Montgomery, why are you wearing last season's red?" Beatrice held her head high, gripping Richard's arm so tight her nails dug into his skin. "Smile," she hissed. "Show them we are unbothered." They walked up the stairs. The security guard at the top, a massive man with an earpiece, stopped them. "Invitation?" Beatrice produced the black card. The guard scanned it. He looked at them with a strange expression, almost pity. "Go right in. You're expected." They walked through the heavy doors. The noise of the street faded, replaced by the swell of violins. The great hall was packed. As Beatrice and Richard entered, a hush fell over the room. It started near the door and spread like a wave until the entire massive hall was silent. 500 heads turned. Beatrice smiled, waving at people she knew. "Margaret, Caroline, so good to see you." No one waved back. They stared. They whispered behind their hands. Beatrice's smile faltered. She looked up the grand staircase. There, standing like royalty, were Stefan and Sarah. Stefan raised his glass. The sound of a spoon tapping crystal echoed through the silent hall. "Ladies and gentlemen," Stefan's voice boomed. "Thank you for coming to celebrate my daughter, Sarah Volkov." Applause thundered. Sarah smiled, a genuine, radiant smile. "But," Stefan continued, raising a hand for silence, "we have 2 uninvited guests. Or rather, guests invited for a very specific purpose." He pointed down at Beatrice and Richard. The crowd parted, leaving the 2 of them isolated in the center of the floor in their wrinkled clothes, a red stain and a disheveled suit in a sea of perfection. "Beatrice Montgomery," Stefan said, "you came here for a deal. You want your debt forgiven?" "Yes," Beatrice cried out, her voice echoing desperately. "We want to settle." "Very well," Stefan said. "I am a man of my word. I will forgive the debt. But first we must watch a short film. Consider it. The Collateral." Stefan gestured to the massive projection screen that had been set up behind the Temple of Dendor. "No," Richard whispered. "The drive." The screen flickered to life. It wasn't the video of the gala. It was a grainy, black and white video. It was dated 26 years ago. It showed a younger Beatrice Montgomery handing a thick envelope of cash to a shady-looking man in a parking garage. The audio crackled, but the voices were clear. "You make sure Maria Conti disappears," Beatrice's voice on the recording said. "My husband had an affair with her. If that baby is born, it threatens my son's inheritance. I want them gone. I don't care how you do it." The room gasped, a collective sound of horror that shook the walls. Sarah froze. She looked at the screen, then at her father. Stefan's face was a mask of pure, cold fury. It hadn't been random enemies who chased Maria away. It hadn't been business rivals. It was Beatrice. Beatrice had hired the hitman who forced Sarah's mother into hiding. Beatrice had caused Sarah to be an orphan. Beatrice stood in the center of the hall, her face white as a sheet. That's a fake. Deep fake. It's AI. "It was recorded by your own private investigator," Stefan said, his voice shaking with suppressed rage. "He kept it for insurance, and I bought his silence for much more than you paid him." Stefan looked at the crowd. "She didn't just bully my daughter. She tried to have her killed before she was even born." Sirens wailed outside. This time they were coming for the kill. Sarah slowly walked down the stairs. The crowd parted for her like the Red Sea. She walked until she was standing inches from Beatrice. Beatrice was trembling. She looked small, old, and pathetic. "You knew," Sarah whispered. "When I married Richard." "Did you know?" "I suspected," Beatrice whimpered. "You looked just like her. Just like that whore Maria. I hated you the moment I saw you." Sarah raised her hand. Beatrice flinched, expecting a slap, but Sarah didn't slap her. She leaned in close, so only Beatrice could hear. "I'm not going to hit you, Beatrice. That would be too easy. I'm going to let you live. You're going to live in a cell, with nothing but your memories of when you mattered. And that is a fate worse than death for you." The doors burst open. FBI agents swarmed the room. "Beatrice Montgomery," an agent shouted, "you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder and racketeering." As the cuffs clicked around Beatrice's wrists, she looked at Richard. "Richard, help me." Richard stepped back, his hands raised. "I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know." He looked at Sarah, tears streaming down his face. "Sarah, please." Sarah turned her back on him. She looked up at her father, who was waiting for her with open arms. She walked up the stairs, leaving the Montgomerys to the wolves. 6 months later. The Manhattan Correctional Center is a stark contrast to the Pierre Hotel. There are no chandeliers, no champagne, and certainly no mercy. Beatrice Montgomery sat on the cold metal bunk of her cell. Her hair, once dyed a rich chestnut and blown out weekly at the Julien Forel salon, was now grey and thinning. Her skin was sallow. She wore a jumpsuit that scratched her skin, an orange polyester blend that smelled of industrial detergent. The guard banged on the bars. "Montgomery, you have a visitor." Beatrice's heart leapt. Richard? Had he finally found a lawyer? Had he found a loophole? She was shuffled into the visitation room, her wrists cuffed. She sat behind the thick glass partition. It wasn't Richard. Sarah sat on the other side. She looked radiant. She wore a simple white blouse and jeans, but on her wrist sat a Patek Philippe watch that cost more than the entire prison block. She looked healthy, vibrant, and at peace. Beatrice grabbed the phone receiver. "You!" she spat, though the fight was mostly gone from her voice. "You came to gloat? Is that it? You want to see the animal in the cage?" Sarah picked up her phone calmly. "No, Beatrice, I didn't come to gloat. I came to give you an update on your assets. Since you are serving 25 years for conspiracy to commit murder, you can't exactly manage your estate." "My estate is gone," Beatrice rasped. "You took it all." "Not everything," Sarah said. There was the Hamptons house. The bank seized it, but they put it up for auction last week. Who bought it? Beatrice asked, a flicker of hope rising. Did the Astors buy it? At least tell me it went to good people. I bought it, Sarah said. Beatrice looked like she had been slapped. You? Yes. But I'm not living there, Sarah continued. I had it bulldozed yesterday. Beatrice gasped. You destroyed a historical landmark. No, Sarah corrected. I destroyed a monument to your vanity. And on the land, I am building the Maria Conti Home for Girls. It will be a sanctuary for foster children. Girls like me. Girls you would have called trash. They will grow up running in your gardens, swimming in your pool, and sleeping in warm beds. Your legacy of cruelty is over. My mother's legacy of love is just beginning. Sarah stood up. She placed her hand on the glass. Richard isn't coming, Beatrice. He changed his number. He blames you for everything. You are all alone. Sarah hung up the phone. She didn't look back as she walked out, leaving Beatrice screaming silently behind the soundproof glass. Brooklyn, a diner. Richard Montgomery, now going by Rick, wiped the grease off the counter with a dirty rag. Hey, buddy, I've been waiting for my coffee for 10 minutes, a customer yelled from booth 4. Coming, sir. Sorry, the machine is jammed, Richard mumbled, keeping his head down. He looked at his reflection in the stainless steel coffee pot. He looked 10 years older. The stress had made his hair fall out. He was living in a studio apartment in Queens with 2 roommates who smoked inside. He walked over to the booth to pour the coffee. The customer was reading the New York Times. On the cover was a picture of Sarah. She was cutting the ribbon at the new foster home in the Hamptons, Stefan Volkov standing proudly by her side. The headline read, "The Volkov Renaissance, How New York's Newest Billionaire is Healing the City." Richard's hand shook. Coffee splashed onto the table. "Watch it, idiot!" the customer snapped. "God, can't you do anything right? That's why you're a waiter." Richard froze. The words echoed in his mind. "Can't you do anything right?" It was what Beatrice used to say. It was what he used to think about Sarah. He looked at the picture of his ex-wife one last time. She was smiling, a real smile, not the fake one she used to wear to please him. She was free. "I'm sorry," Richard whispered, though he wasn't talking to the customer. "I'm so sorry." He went back to the counter, picked up another rag, and continued to wipe away the stains, knowing that some stains never truly come out. The Volkov estate, Lake Como, Italy. The sun was setting over the water, painting the sky in hues of purple and gold. Sarah sat on the terrace, a sketchbook in her lap. She had started drawing again, a talent she had suppressed because Richard said it was a waste of time. Stefan walked out, carrying 2 glasses of wine. He sat beside her, looking out at the lake where he had met Maria all those years ago. "You look like her," Stefan said softly, "especially in this light." Sarah closed the sketchbook. "I feel like her. I finally feel like I know who I am." "You are Sarah Volkov," Stefan said, clinking his glass against hers. "And you have done something very difficult, ma petite. You didn't just survive. You conquered. But tell me, do you miss it? The old life?" Sarah thought for a moment. She thought about the penthouse, the galas, the desperate need for approval. "I miss the person I thought Richard was," she admitted. "But I don't miss the person I had to become to be with him. I like this version of me better." "Good," Stefan smiled. "Because we have a busy schedule. Tomorrow we fly to Paris. The board of directors wants to meet the new vice president of Volkov Industries." Sarah laughed. "Dad, I don't know anything about shipping." "You know how to spot a liar," Stefan said, his eyes twinkling. "And you know how to stand your ground when people try to strip you of your dignity. That is all you need to know to run a business. The rest, I will teach you." Sarah looked out at the horizon. The nightmare was over. The Montgomerys were a memory, fading like a bad dream in the morning light. She had her father. She had her name. And for the first time in her life, she had a future that belonged entirely to her. She took a sip of wine and smiled. "Okay, Dad," she said. "Let's go to Paris." And that is the incredible story of Sarah Volkoff. From a silenced, humiliated wife to a billionaire heiress who brought an entire dynasty to its knees. It's a brutal reminder that you should never judge someone by their current circumstances. You never know who is standing in their corner. Beatrice and Richard Montgomery learned the hard way that when you strip someone of their dignity, you might just be revealing their armor. What do you think? Did Beatrice deserve life in prison, or was losing her fortune enough punishment? And would you have forgiven Richard if you were Sarah? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice and revenge, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.